Howdy folks, Mark Serbu, gun designer, gun nut. I'll tell you what, I am particularly excited about this one for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, it's a cool gun. Just look at it. I mean, on its own, regardless of how it got here, it looks pretty badass. But to me, and I'm sure to a lot of you, the how it got here is a really big deal. Now, my usual method for gun design is, aside from thinking about stuff when I'm in the shower or driving down the road or on the toilet or whatever, I sit down with my CAD program and just start creating. And as you can see, that's what my buddy Justin has done here as well. Now, hopefully everyone realizes that CAD is the greatest thing as far as getting your ideas into a format that can be used downstream for whatever method there is for producing something. For many years, it's been subtractive manufacturing. You start off with a block of steel and you cut away and grind away whatever you don't need. Of course, there are different ways around that. There's forging and casting, but you still have to end up doing some sort of machining on those parts afterwards. Now, the future is going to be crazy. The gun haters freak out about 3D printing now, but that stuff's in its infancy. In the future, we're going to have just insane stuff that you can't even imagine, but I'm going to go ahead and imagine it for you. I'm going to call it Selective Molecular Rearrangement, SMR. Now, if you remember the scene from the movie The Fifth Element, this is kind of what I'm talking about. Of course, it's not going to be a microwave oven sort of thing where you just close the door, push the button, and within seconds, you've got whatever it is that you wanted. It's going to be a little more involved than that, I would bet. I think there's going to be some sort of like fish tank with some strange fluid in it. And then the machine, whatever its form is, it's going to basically go molecule by molecule and rearrange it to be whatever the hell you want it to be. I mean, we'll have a complete gun coming out of this goop with ammo loaded, ready to go. I mean, that's obviously science fiction at this point, but I guarantee you that someday they're going to come up with a way to do this. Bottom line, you got to learn CAD. There's got to be a way to get that idea out of your head and into a format that can be manufactured. Now, CAD, especially CAD solid modelers, have a really steep learning curve. And I know a lot of people are just like, I can't handle it. I just can't deal with it, especially the older guys. Well, guess what, older guys? With the advances in AI, that's going to trickle down into the CAD world, and I guarantee that's going to get a hell of a lot easier. So look forward to that. Now, if you've been checking out the video of the gun in the background here, I'm sure you have a few questions. I did too. I sent Justin a list of almost 25 questions about this gun, and one of the first ones gave me a clue into what I was looking at here. He basically started out making a 223 version of the MP44, or the Sturmgewehr, of course, one of my favorite guns. And as you can see in his CAD model here, he's used some of his same designs from the Sturmgewehr in his latest creation, particularly with that two-piece trigger mechanism with the link connecting the pieces. And also the bolt carrier, you can see, looks almost exactly the same. And check that out, 3D printer guys. That's a full Sturmgewehr 3D printed. I think everything but the wood. Every receiver part, that is. That's pretty amazing. And yes, of course, I will be pestering him for details about that gun for a future video. But for now, back to the JLC-24. Now, the most amazing thing about this gun to me was the fact that the guy doesn't have a CNC machine. And I was like, what? How do you make gun parts like this without a CNC machine? And I guess I'm semi-embarrassed to admit that I didn't know of this method that he used, not until very recently. Now, the first crazy thing he did was to 3D print out a router guide to allow him to cut those crazy contours in the aluminum with a router. Wow. Now, this is a CNC part all day long, and making it with a router guide, that'd definitely be a pain, but not nearly as big a pain as trying to make it on a manual mill, and a lot quicker too. Not including 3D printing out the guides, of course. Now, there are CNC parts on the gun, like those sheet steel side plates, which form part of the magazine well as completing the bottom end of the upper receiver. Justin had those cut out of 4130 sheet by one of those services you can find all over the internet that does laser cutting. One thing I was very interested about with those parts is the laser cut edges, because as you might know, when you're laser cutting a heat treatable steel, the edges get hard as a frickin' rock. But Justin said he didn't have any trouble reaming those holes that were cut a little bit undersized, obviously. So that's good news. Now, I recently had some of the exact same material, same thickness, laser cut, and I found those edges were, a file wouldn't bite into them, and I actually had to anneal the whole plate. But, as with most things, your results may vary. And here's another part that screams, please cut me with a CNC. But apparently, same way. And that was 2024 aluminum, and he said just because he had a piece of it lying around. And perfect choice of material. It could easily have been made out of 6061 or 7075, but 2024 is fine. You know, looking at this a little closer, I'm guessing he used a combination of manual mill plus the router with the 3D printed router guide. And I guess this is a good place to bring up the fact that I've asked Justin to check out the comment section here to see if people have questions. And here's my first question. Is it like I thought? Did you actually use a mill and the router with the router guide on this one? And if you've got questions, which I hope you will, please ask in the comment section and hopefully Justin will answer. And here are some nice close-up looks at some parts that were made with what would be considered in my world to be really primitive methods. But God, you know, they obviously do the job. Now, if you've been watching carefully, you might notice that Justin is a very accomplished TIG welder. Well, apparently he started when he was 6 years old, so I guess it makes sense. Now, I did ask him about those tacks on all the parts, and I'm like, you know, are you doing this just for prototype and you're going to fill in the, you know, do the full weld later? And he's like, yeah, you know, a lot of this stuff is spot welded on production guns, and I figured I'd just do some tacks here and there, and you know, I'd agree that that's definitely plenty for a lot of applications. So, yeah, what the heck? It does the job. It holds things together, and you don't have the potential warpage from excessive heat that you could definitely get from welding the entire seam. Now here you can see the three main steel pieces that make up the receiver. First, you've got that 4130 tube that houses the barrel extension, bolt, all that stuff. Then you've got those laser cut pieces of 4130 beneath that are tack welded to it. And then on top, you've got a piece of square tubing that is also tacked onto it later. Here it's not yet, obviously. Now here's an innovative use of 3D printing, and it kind of goes against what a lot of guys are trying to do these days. Nowadays, people are trying to make the entire receiver, or as much as they can, with 3D printed materials, 3D printed plastic. But here he's just using it as a model just to see what the finished product would look like, and also as a method to check fit on his final parts, which are metal. Well, there you go, folks. Yet another guy who had a dream, and with a lot of hard work and dedication, he made it real. One thing the gun haters will never understand is that people like us who make guns, we're not about destruction and murder and mayhem. I mean, those are just side benefits. Okay, totally joking there, folks. In reality, this hobby, this pursuit, this quest is awesome. You have to master a bunch of disciplines. There's a lot of problem solving. This is like engineering and design 101 all rolled up into one project. And the beauty of Justin's design here is that there's a really low barrier to entry as far as equipment goes. I mean, you can make this thing with hundreds of dollars worth of equipment, unlike some of the stuff I make, which takes hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment. Well, folks, I've blabbed on long enough, and I've put a lot of time in this video. I need to move on with my life, so hope you enjoyed the fruits of Justin's labor here. Just a regular talented guy who put in a lot of hard work and effort, and we all get to enjoy it. You got questions? We got a comment section. Thanks for your time as always. I always appreciate you. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and go check out my other gun channel and watch over there a little bit so I don't get kicked out of the partner program again. All right, folks, have a good one. Take care.